March 8, 2012. Homestead, Florida. Just south of Miami, on the edge of the Cheatham Drain. A patrol team spots a set of eyes reflecting in the beam of a halogen spotlight. In the biology of the Everglades, this is known as tapetum lucidum, the layer of tissue behind the retina that grants night vision. Usually, the color of that reflection tells you exactly what you are looking at. Alligators reflect red. Native American crocodiles reflect a softer yellow. But the separation between these eyes suggests a skull width that doesn't match the local census. The patrol moves in to tag what they assume is a large nuisance alligator. But as the boat drifts within 10 meters, the animal does something impossible. It doesn't submerge. It doesn't roll. It surges forward. It hits the mud bank and sprints, lifting its belly completely off the ground, hitting speeds of 14 kilometers per hour on land. By the time the rangers scramble onto the bank, the creature is gone. Disappeared into the sawgrass. They filed the report as an anomaly, a case of mistaken identity. But 4 years later, inside a sterile genetics lab at the University of Florida, a DNA sequencer would prove that the thing in the water that night was not a mistake. The tissue samples didn't match the American alligator. They didn't match the American crocodile. The sequence revealed a biological signature that belonged 7,000 miles away, in the Okavango Delta of Botswana. We thought we were dealing with an invasive species. We were wrong. The genetic dating suggested that by the time we found them, the invasion had already been underway for a decade. To understand the gravity of this discovery, you first have to understand the rigid politics of the Florida Everglades. This is not just a swamp. It is a battlefield partitioned by millions of years of evolution. For the last epoch, the rule of law here has been enforced by two distinct kings. First, the American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis. Dark, armored, and ubiquitous, they rule the freshwater sawgrass. They are the brutes of the swamp, with a bite force designed to crush turtle shells. Second, is the American crocodile, Crocodilus acutus. These are the ghosts of the glades. They are strictly coastal creatures, evolved for the brackish water where the ocean meets the swamp. Despite their prehistoric appearance, the American crocodile is surprisingly timid. They are reclusive fish eaters. In the history of the United States, there has never been a confirmed human fatality attributed to an acutus. They are shy, they are endangered, and they are incredibly fragile. Their population hangs by a thread, mostly clustered around the cooling canals of the Turkey Point nuclear power plant. The system worked because the boundaries were clear. Gators in the fresh water, crocs in the salt water. But in the mid-2000s, the swamp began to change. The usual ambient noise of the ecosystem shifted. Fishermen in the Silver Bluff Creek area began reporting a change in the apex hierarchy. The large, dominant American crocodiles, animals that had held basking spots for 20 years, suddenly vanished. They weren't dead, they were displaced. They had abandoned prime real estate. In biology, an apex predator only abandons its territory for two reasons: a collapse in the food source or the arrival of a superior predator. At the time, the scientific community had a convenient scapegoat: the Burmese python. This was the height of the python explosion. Giant constrictors were wiping out the mammal population: raccoons, possums, bobcats. When local residents reported seeing dark, aggressive lizards deep in the canals, biologists dismissed the claims. They assumed locals were misidentifying melanistic alligators or simply seeing pythons in the water. It was a classic case of cognitive bias. We saw what we expected to see. But the locals were insistent. They claimed these new reptiles didn't act like gators. They didn't bask passively. They tracked boats. They sat high in the water watching. While the media focused on the war against the pythons, a second front had opened up in the water. A predator had slipped through the back door of the exotic pet trade, utilizing the python hysteria as camouflage. The first solid clue didn't come from a sighting. It came from the dead. Rangers began finding carcasses of smaller reptiles that didn't fit the forensic profile of a python attack. A python kills by constriction. It causes cardiac arrest through compression. It leaves the skeleton intact. These bodies were sheared, torn apart with rotational velocity, the forensic signature of a death roll. But the bite radius was too wide for a gator, and the aggression level was too high for an American croc. The biologists suspected a rogue alligator was to blame. But they were about to discover that the creature patrolling Silver Bluff Creek wasn't just a different species. It was a biological machine operating on a completely different metabolic setting, one that was growing 28% faster than anything else in the water. The breakthrough didn't happen in the wild. It happened in 2009, when a field team managed to capture a juvenile crocodile in the canal system near Miami. It was small, barely a hatchling, but immediately the herpetology team at the University of Florida noticed something was wrong. In robotics, there is a concept called the uncanny valley, where something looks almost human, but small imperfections create a sense of unease. The same principle applies to biology. Dr. Kenneth Crisco, the collection manager at the Florida Museum of Natural History, examined the specimen. On the surface, it had the V-shaped snout of a crocodile, distinguishing it from an alligator. But the architecture was incorrect. The primary red flag was the dorsal armor. The back of a crocodile is covered in bony plates called osteoderms or scuts. Take a look at the native American crocodile. Its scuts are irregular. They are scattered with wide spacing between the rows. It is an organic, chaotic pattern. But the specimen on Dr. Crisco's table was different. Its osteoderms were perfectly aligned, rigid, geometric. There were no gaps. This wasn't just a different skin pattern, it was a different blueprint for armor. Then there was the temperament. Native American crocodiles are flighty. When captured, they often thrash once and then go catatonic, a survival mechanism to conserve energy. This specimen didn't stop. It displayed a sustained, high-octane aggression that bordered on the suicidal. It didn't hiss, it emitted a low-frequency growl, a sound rarely heard in Florida waters. The team was baffled. Was this a mutation? A genetic deformity caused by the runoff from the nearby Turkey Point nuclear plant? Or perhaps something even rarer, a hybrid? Hybridization between alligators and crocodiles is biologically impossible. They are too far apart on the evolutionary tree. They split 80 million years ago. But hybridization between two crocodile species? That is possible. The working theory became that an American crocodile had somehow crossed with a Central American species, creating a mutt with an unpredictable attitude. But theories are not data. And the data the team was about to collect would shatter the hybrid theory entirely. For 2 years the team monitored the area. They needed more samples. In 2012 and 2014 they finally got them. They captured 3 more animals. But these weren't hatchlings anymore. They were subadults. And they were growing at a rate that defied the laws of the Everglades. Reptiles are ectothermic. Their growth is limited by heat and food availability. In Florida, an American crocodile grows slowly, carefully conserving energy in a competitive environment. But these new specimens were growing an estimated 28% faster than their native counterparts. In the wild, a 28% advantage isn't just a statistic. It's a massacre. It means you reach sexual maturity faster. It means you reach apex size faster. It means you can eat the competition before they can eat you. The 2012 capture at Silver Bluff Creek confirmed the worst fears. The animal wasn't just fast in terms of growth. It was physically dominant. During the capture, the team witnessed the animal's flight response. When cornered, an American croc swims away. This animal stood its ground on the canal bank, lifting its body high on its legs, a high walk posture that signals supreme confidence. The morphology was consistent. The geometric scuts, the short, broad snout, the aggression. Dr. Crisco knew that visual identification wasn't enough to declare a state of emergency. He needed the code. The team extracted tissue samples from the tail of the captured specimens. They packaged the vials and sent them to the sequencing lab. They were looking for a specific marker in the mitochondrial DNA, the cytochrome B gene. This gene acts as a biological passport. It doesn't just tell you what an animal is, it tells you exactly where its ancestors swam. The team expected the results to point to Central America, maybe Cuba or Jamaica. But when the sequencer finished its run in May of 2016, the coordinates it gave didn't point to the Caribbean. They pointed to a river system known for harboring the deadliest interactions between humans and wildlife on the planet. The machine had found a match. And it was a match that meant the Florida Everglades had just become a designated kill zone. The results were published in the Journal of Herpetological Conservation and Biology. The DNA samples from the Florida specimens were a 100% match for Crocodilus niloticus, the Nile crocodile. This wasn't just a biological curiosity, it was a worst-case scenario. The American crocodile is a specialist fish eater. The Nile crocodile is a generalist man-eater. It is responsible for an estimated 200 human fatalities annually in its native range. It views anything that enters the water not as a threat but as biomass. But the geneticists at the University of Florida found something even more specific buried in the mitochondrial haplotypes. Nile crocodiles are spread across 26 countries in Africa. But the Florida specimens didn't match the populations in Egypt or Uganda. Their genetic markers were identical to a specific subpopulation found in the KwaZulu-Natal province of South Africa. This was the smoking gun. Crocodiles don't swim 7,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, and they certainly don't navigate from South Africa to South Miami. The KwaZulu connection confirmed that the vector was human. Sometime in the late 1990s, a collector imported specimens from this specific South African lineage. They brought them into Florida, likely illegally or with forged permits. And then, when the animals grew from cute 10-inch hatchlings into 6-foot monsters, they did what reckless owners always do. They opened the cage door. But the species identification was only the first half of the horror. The second half was the timeline. Recall the specimens. In 2009 they caught a hatchling. In 2012 they caught a subadult. In 2014 another subadult. Genetic analysis confirmed that these animals were related. They were siblings. This implies the existence of a reproductive pair, a mother and a father, living freely in the Everglades. To produce a hatchling in 2009, the parents had to be sexually mature. Nile crocodiles take about 10 to 12 years to reach maturity. This means patient zero, the original breeding pair, has likely been in the swamp since roughly 1998 or 2000. For nearly 15 years, two massive African apex predators were living, hunting, and breeding in the Florida suburbs, completely undetected. They survived the hurricanes. They survived the cold snaps. They survived the Python explosion. We managed to catch their children. The 2012 and 2014 captures were removed from the wild. But here is the question that keeps biologists awake at night. We found the offspring, but we never found the parents. The adults who founded this colony, the ones big enough to survive 15 years in the wild, are statistically likely to still be out there. And if they are, they aren't just surviving. They are waiting. The immediate threat is the Nile crocodile itself. But the long-term nightmare is something far more complex. It's a biological concept known as heterosis, or hybrid vigor. The American crocodile and the Nile crocodile are distinct species, but they are genetically similar enough to interbreed. In fact, in captivity, we have seen related species cross-pollinate to create offspring that are often larger, stronger, and more aggressive than either parent. Currently, the native American crocodile is trapped by temperature. It is tropical. If it swims too far north, past West Palm Beach, the winter cold snaps will kill it. It is biologically fenced into the southern tip of the state. But the Nile crocodile is different. In Africa, it thrives in varied climates, from the scorching heat of the equator to the cooler, temperate waters of the southern Cape. It is robust. If the invasive Nile crocodiles manage to mate with the native population, the resulting hybrid could inherit the Nile's aggression and the Americans' local adaptations. We wouldn't just be facing a man-eater, we would be facing a super croc capable of expanding its range north into the residential canals of Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, and potentially as far as Orlando. The barriers that kept the monsters in the swamp are dissolving. Evolution is finding a way to breach the fence. Since the 2016 confirmation, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has operated under a shoot-on-sight policy for Nile crocodiles. The goal is total eradication. But we must ask ourselves the difficult question: is eradication even possible? The Everglades is one of the most inhospitable, inaccessible terrains on Earth. It is 1.5 million acres of flooded sawgrass, mangrove tunnels, and black water. It is a place where a Boeing 727 crashed in 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401, and the swamp swallowed parts of the wreckage so completely they were never seen again. If a 100-ton jetliner can vanish in this grass, hiding a breeding population of crocodiles is effortless. We caught the 2009 hatchling. We caught the 2012 subadult. We caught the 2014 sibling. We have removed the evidence that we found. But science relies on data, and the data tells us that for every one we catch, statistical probability suggests others remain. The parents, the breeding pair from the year 2000, were never found. They likely died of old age, or perhaps they're still out there, ancient and massive, watching the airboats pass by. We used to worry about the snakes. But while we were looking down at the pythons, something else was looking up at us. The king of the Nile has claimed a new kingdom. And in this kingdom we are no longer the tourists. We are the prey.